Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. I am Maddie, 32 years old, and I live near my family in Houston. I'm not the type of person who gets paranoid easily, but after what happened, I can't step into a grocery store without checking my surroundings at least 3 times. It happened last year when I took my twin niece and nephew, Heather and Merlin, just 3 years old, to Costco. My sister had work to do, so I agreed to watch them for the afternoon. I wasn't a mother, but I thought, this should be easy. They're just 2 adorable kids. I can handle this. I was wrong. Taking 2 3-year-olds into a supermarket is like trying to control a pair of hyperactive kittens. I strapped them into the double shopping cart, trying to keep things under control as I navigated the aisles. The kids chattered away, pointing at everything, while I focused on getting in and out as quickly as possible. And then, I noticed her. A middle-aged woman with curly blonde hair, wearing a long beige coat. She stood at the end of the aisle, staring at me and the kids. At first, I assumed she was just absent-mindedly looking in our direction, but when I moved to the next aisle, she was there again, still standing, still watching. That's when I started to feel uneasy. I tried to ignore her and continued shopping, but a few minutes later, as I turned to grab a carton of milk, she was suddenly right behind me. She smiled. "They're adorable." I forced a polite smile. "Thank you." Then she tilted her head, staring at the kids with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "They must be twins, right? I've always loved twins. Such beautiful children, like little angels." I nodded, my only thought being, get out of here now. But then she asked a question that made me freeze. "Where are their parents? Or are you watching them alone?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "They're with me today. I'm their aunt." Her smile widened, something unsettling in her expression. "Oh, really? So no one else is with you?" Every instinct in me screamed that something was very, very wrong. I immediately turned the cart around and said, "Sorry, we have to go." And that's when I saw him. At the end of the aisle, a man leaned against a shopping cart. He wore a black hoodie with the hood pulled low over his face. He was pretending to look at his phone, but his eyes never left me. I had no doubt now. This was a setup. I gripped the cart handle tightly, forcing myself to stay calm. Don't run. Don't panic. Stay in control. I pretended not to notice him, instead smiling at the kids and speaking loud enough for those nearby to hear. "All right, kids, let's go find Mommy." I turned the cart and walked straight to the checkout area, where there were more employees and other shoppers. I didn't look back, but I could feel it. The woman and the man were still watching me. At the register, I kept my voice natural but firm. "Excuse me, could you call security? I think someone is following me, and these children." The cashier's expression changed immediately. Within a minute, a security guard arrived. I quickly explained what had happened, and he nodded, saying he'd check it out. I waited near the exit, my heart pounding, gripping the shopping cart tightly. The woman was nowhere in sight. The man had disappeared too. A few moments later, the security guard returned, his face tense. "You were right. We checked the security cameras. She followed you from the moment you entered the store, and so did that man. The second I started heading toward them, they both left." I immediately called my sister, telling her to come pick up the kids and swearing I would never take them out alone again. That night, I did some research and found something I will never forget. Human traffickers often target women who are alone with children. They watch, looking for someone distracted, especially with young kids. They wait for a moment of vulnerability, and in just a few seconds, a child can be taken and disappear forever. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't noticed something was off. If I had been just a little slower. But I know one thing for sure. If you ever feel like someone is watching you or your child, don't ignore that feeling. I'm Sarah. I work part-time at Peterson's grocery store. This whole ordeal started during my night shift 3 weeks ago. Usually after closing, I'd stay about 20 minutes to clean up. That night, I flipped the closed sign and started tidying the dry goods aisle, which customers had messed up. The hum of machinery was steady, blending with the occasional car passing by on the street. I liked this quiet. No grumpy Mr. Peterson, no customers asking questions. I was wiping down the meat counter in the back when I heard a noise. I froze, cloth still in hand. Listening for a few more seconds, I pinpointed it as a metallic sound, like someone prying at a door. I switched off the back lights and tiptoed out. Through the main door's glass, I saw 2 figures. One was tall, the other shorter. Robbers, I thought. My first instinct was to call the police, but then I realized I'd left my phone in the cash register drawer. To get my phone, I'd have to pass the main door, right where they were. I took a risk, crawling along the floor towards the cash register. Suddenly, I heard a click. They'd opened the lock. I quickly ducked behind the counter. My heart pounded in my chest, and I bit my lip to keep from breathing too loudly. From my hiding spot, I saw 2 pairs of feet step inside. 1 pair of worn black leather shoes, 1 pair of white athletic shoes. They closed the door carefully. I peered through the reflective glass of the refrigerator. They both carried backpacks, and their hands held long objects. As they drew closer, the neon light from outside illuminated them, and I clearly saw the taller one holding a gun. I pressed myself into the darkest corner behind the counter, making myself as small as possible. They didn't pay attention to the shelves, but went straight to the cash register. Their footsteps stopped right beside me. I held my breath, knees pressed to my chest, arms wrapped tightly around myself, feeling my heartbeat stronger than ever. If he just bent down, I knew I would die. A few seconds later, their footsteps echoed again, moving further from where I was hiding. It seemed they'd found the owner's safe. For the next 10 minutes, there were sounds of drilling, sawing, and muffled whispers. My legs were going numb from crouching. My neck ached from craning my head to listen. But I didn't dare move. From how they talked to each other, I thought they seemed very professional. They knew exactly what they were doing, with calmness and a plan. I thought about how to escape. The back door could be opened from the inside, but I'd have to pass where they were. My phone was right on the counter, but I'd have to stand up straight to grab it. The metallic sounds finally stopped. The safe had been opened. It was almost over. They'd take the money and leave. I would survive. But unexpectedly, the phone on the counter rang. My body froze, my eyes wide with shock. The 2 robbers went silent instantly. Their footsteps moved quickly closer to me. I guessed it was the owner calling. He occasionally called to check in or ask if I'd gotten home, but not now. His concern could kill me. The phone stopped ringing. I heard paper rustling and a small curse. They were searching for the phone. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. I figured it was the owner calling back. I thought to myself, this is it. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed my hair and pulled me up. "You bitch!" the tall one snarled. I cried out in fear and begged for my life. The other one quickly ran over. "There are lights at the end of the street. They're here." "Damn it! Find a way out!" As the 2 robbers panicked, a police loudspeaker blared, ordering them to surrender. The 2 robbers yelled at each other. I saw flashlight beams through the main door's glass. The police were approaching the entrance. Suddenly, the tall one turned back to me. "Get up!" he yelled loudly. He pressed the gun barrel against my temple. The other one stood beside him, gun pointed towards the door. My whole body went limp. I couldn't feel my legs anymore. "I've got a hostage here. If you move in, she dies." The sounds outside stopped. I heard the police whispering. "Let her go, and we'll negotiate." The police loudspeaker boomed, calm and steady. "I want a car and no police at the back exit of the store." The shorter one beside him seemed worried. "Marcus, I don't think this is a good idea. We should—" "Shut up! I know what I'm doing!" So his name was Marcus, I thought to myself. The tense standoff continued. The police tried to persuade him, but Marcus became increasingly unstable. Fear had completely paralyzed my ability to react. The shorter one suddenly lunged towards the door. As soon as the door opened, he was shot, falling instantly. Marcus watched, his eyes red with rage. In the very next second, another gunshot rang out loudly. The gun flew from Marcus's hand, and the police immediately stormed in. Marcus was completely surprised and caught off guard. He was quickly subdued and handcuffed. I collapsed to the floor, unable to move or answer any of the police's questions. I was taken to the hospital for a health checkup and psychological support. It took many days for my mind to return to normal. Through the news, I learned their names were Marcus Webb, 45, and Danny Chen, 19. Marcus had a criminal record for theft and is now detained, facing several serious charges. Danny was a college dropout and a first-time offender. He didn't make it. I think in that last moment Danny wanted to run out to surrender. I still vividly remember the guilt and worry in his eyes. I later learned more details about how the police arrived so quickly. It turned out that after Mr. Peterson called me, he checked the surveillance cameras. He immediately called the police and provided detailed information about the situation. He saved my life. I thanked Mr. Peterson and resigned from the grocery store. I found an administrative job where there were more people around. I can't stop thinking about the moment I became a hostage, about the complete paralysis I felt when facing death. Nightmares still often appear, but I'm slowly learning to overcome that fear. I remember the first time I met David was on a cold March morning when I walked into Kroger for an interview for a new position. The manager was guiding me around the supermarket when we came across him. He was stacking cereal boxes on the shelf. "Ah, this is David," the manager introduced. "He's been working here for nearly 7 years, one of our hardest working employees." "I'm Daria, 26 years old, just moved to Massachusetts with my family." I introduced myself. David nodded at me coolly. I started working at Kroger that very day. Gradually, I realized that David didn't talk much with the other employees. David is the type of person who isolates himself, one coworker whispered to me during a break. He does his job, doesn't cause trouble, but he's not close with anyone. One day, while we were both stocking shelves in the back, I decided to break the silence. "What do you usually do on your days off, David?" He looked up, surprised by the question, or maybe it was because I had used his name. "I do YouTube." His voice was soft. "Really? What's your channel?" I was genuinely curious. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone and opened a page. Secret Shadow David. I've had it since high school. For the first time, I saw David not as cold or strange as everyone said. We became closer from that moment on. That night, I searched for his channel. Secret Shadow. David had about 3,000 subscribers, not a lot, but not small for an independent channel. The first video I watched was a short vlog about his daily life. David spoke to the camera much more naturally than he did in person. He even joked around, with a bright smile that I'd never seen at the supermarket. We started chatting more during breaks, mainly about YouTube and the content creation process. I discovered that David was very smart and had a sense of humor that most people wouldn't notice. I gradually became a loyal viewer of Secret Shadow David's channel. I enjoyed seeing the subtle changes on his face every time I mentioned a specific detail from the video. It felt like I was the only one who truly saw him. I started watching older videos on David's channel. That's when I began to notice something strange. Then I found a video called Thoughts on Control from 13 months ago. David was sitting in a dark room, only one light shining on his face from below. "Have you ever thought about how fate is decided?" he asked. "I think about it all the time. Is everything predetermined? Or is everything just random? He pulled a coin out of his pocket. Sometimes I wonder if our entire lives could be decided by something as simple as a coin flip. Heads or tails, live or die. David tossed the coin into the air. When it fell, he slapped his hand on it, but didn't show the result to the viewers. Instead, he looked directly into the camera with a strange smile. Maybe we don't need to know the result right now. The video ended abruptly, leaving me feeling confused. I wasn't sure whether to ask David about these videos or if this was just a dark phase he'd gotten through. I decided not to bring them up. Until one day, 3 months after I started working at Kroger, David posted a new video titled Randomness and Fate. I've been thinking a lot about how our lives are shaped, about where we work, who we meet, like where I work. He paused, smiling lightly. Kroger, where I've spent almost 7 years of my life, or my home, where I shoot these videos. This was the first time he had specifically mentioned our workplace. David pulled a coin from his pocket. I think it's time to decide. Tails, my home. Heads, the Kroger supermarket. He tossed the coin into the air. It spun in the air, the camera light flashing as it fell into his hand. David looked down, then looked up at me with a bright but cold smile. See you on July 6th. The video ended abruptly, leaving an uneasy feeling in me. The next day at Kroger, I tried to act normal when I saw David. He was still the same as always, quiet, hardworking, with a small smile when we crossed paths. I decided I had to say something, but I didn't know where to begin. Hey David, I watched your new video. And then what? Accuse him of planning something terrible? What if I was wrong? I decided to take a different approach. David, would you like to go for coffee after work? I really enjoy your videos, and I have a few ideas I'd like to discuss about your YouTube channel. He looked at me, slightly surprised, then nodded. Sure, I think that's fine. We met at a nearby coffee shop after work. I tried to keep the conversation light, talking about his funny videos, and gradually moved on to the more recent ones. Your latest video was really impressive, I said, carefully observing his reaction. About randomness and fate. Have you thought about that topic a lot? Do you ever feel like everything is beyond your control? Like every decision is made by someone else? I took a deep breath. What is 7/6, David? In your video? He looked back at me, a small smile forming on his lips. It's just an important day. The conversation continued, but I couldn't get more information about the July 6th date or his intentions. 2 more days passed in a state of anxiety. David didn't come to work, which wasn't unusual since he often had midweek days off. But with every hour that passed, I became more certain that something was wrong. I thought about reporting it to the police, but what could I say? That a coworker posted a strange YouTube video mentioning our workplace and a specific day. There was no direct threat, nothing specific, just a feeling that something was off. The night before July 6th, I hardly slept. I re-watched all of David's videos from the last 6 months. On the morning of July 6th, I arrived at Kroger 2 hours before my shift, hoping to meet David and talk to him before anything happened. The supermarket had just opened, with only a few customers. I walked around the aisles and back room, but there was no sign of David. Marcus was at the register, checking the books as usual. Then I saw him. David had just walked in through the front door, wearing a long black coat despite the warm weather. He moved slowly, his gaze fixed on Marcus, an eerie calmness about him. I stood frozen, unable to believe what I was witnessing. David reached into his coat and pulled out a gun. I saw Marcus look up, his eyes widening as he saw David approaching. David raised the gun, his smile unshaken. No hesitation. "David!" No! I yelled, running toward them. A loud bang echoed in the confined space of the supermarket. Then a second shot. I stopped, stunned, seeing Marcus slump to the ground, his head no longer intact. David turned toward me, the gun still in his hand. But instead of pointing it at me, he just stood there, looking at me. This is what happens. The coin has decided. This is fate. From a distance, I could hear sirens. Someone had called them. David seemed to hear it too. He looked down at the gun in his hand, then back at me. "Thanks for watching my videos," he said. "Thanks for truly seeing me. No one else did." Then, before I could say anything else, David turned the gun on himself and pulled the trigger. His tall, thin body collapsed to the floor, twitching for a few seconds before lying still. I knelt beside him, too shocked to cry or scream. In David's coat pocket, something was sticking out. I reached for it, a coin, the same coin from his video. I flipped it over and saw that both sides were the same, a rigged coin. The following week, the police interviewed me about my relationship with David and what I knew. I told them about the YouTube videos, about the signs I had missed or misunderstood. They found David's journals, detailing the years of abuse from childhood, isolation, and the growing hatred for Marcus, whom he felt had intentionally humiliated him. David's YouTube channel was deleted. Kroger closed for a week, then reopened with a small memorial for Marcus. No one mentioned David. I wonder if things could have turned out differently if someone had shown empathy and understood David sooner. Sometimes, I still wonder how many other people out there, behind the screens, with small smiles and silent cries for help, are never heard. I am Marie, 28 years old, and I have been living alone in the city of Fresno for nearly 8 years. I never thought that working at the bakery counter in a Walmart supermarket could turn into a lifelong obsession. I had been working here for over 3 years, starting every day early in the morning when the store was still quiet. It was a routine job with flour, ovens, the delicious smell of fresh bread, and brief conversations with co-workers. Everything changed the day Gim Arcour disappeared. Gim was a young girl. She was beautiful, quick-witted, always volunteered for the night shift, and was ready to work extra hours at any time. No one at the bakery worked harder than Gim. She once said she needed money to help her family, that she couldn't afford to fail. She was always on time, never missed a day without notice. And yet one morning, she didn't show up for her shift. At first, everyone thought maybe Gim was sick or had an urgent matter to deal with. But when the manager called and no one answered, a strange feeling began to creep in. I remember last week she seemed more stressed than usual. When we were cleaning up after our shift, Gim confided in me about a problem that had been worrying her. "Marie," she whispered, still wiping down the oven, "I think someone is trying to hurt me." I stopped mid-action and looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I am not sure," Gim sighed. "But Brad always looks at me with these strange eyes. Last week I found my locker had been broken into, and yesterday I saw him hanging around, even though it wasn't his shift." Brad was the night shift manager, a middle-aged man who was quiet with a cold stare. He had only started working here a few months ago. I nervously told Gim to report it to the manager. Gim shook her head helplessly since Brad was the manager, and she had no concrete evidence. I placed my hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "If there's anything that makes you feel unsafe, tell me, okay?" Gim smiled weakly and nodded. "Thanks. Maybe I'm just overthinking." Nearly a week after the incident, no one knew where Gim had gone. Her family had no news either. The police were called in. They questioned all the staff, searched for information, but there were no traces to be found. A few days after Gim's disappearance, life seemed to go back to normal, or at least, people tried to make themselves believe that. I still went to work every day, still spread dough on trays, still heard the oven crackling as if nothing had happened. Everything became eerily silent, as if no one dared to mention Gim's name. We kept working, but the worry lingered in every glance. I couldn't help but notice that Brad seemed unnervingly calm after Jim disappeared. While all of us were tense and worried, he remained composed, as if nothing had happened. Sometimes I even caught him smiling to himself while checking the oven, the one Jim used to handle. Then, that morning, the first nightmare began. A middle-aged woman stormed up to the bakery counter, her face flushed with anger. She slammed a bag of bread onto the counter, her voice sharp with frustration. "Do you know what's in here?" I slowly looked down at the bag of bread. On the outside, it looked like any other baguette, golden brown, still giving off that familiar, fragrant baked smell. But when the woman tore open the bread, inside was a dark patch, and before I could process it, the customer pulled out a long brown hair. I heard murmurs from the people around us. The noise rose, as if a crowd was about to burst into chaos. The manager quickly rushed over, forcing a tight smile in an attempt to calm the customer. He hurriedly tried to come up with an explanation. "Sorry, ma'am, this is definitely an accident. We'll check the baking process to make sure this doesn't happen again." I just stood there trembling, my mind spinning with one thought. The hair, it looked so much like Jim's. That evening, I sat curled up on the old couch, a thin blanket draped over my shoulders. The TV buzzed in the quiet room, filling the emptiness of a lonely night after a long shift. I held a cup of water, taking small sips to ease the fatigue building in my body. Today had been long. I tried to push aside the swirling thoughts about Jim, the hair and the bread, the strange feelings that had been haunting me these past few days. But then, a news headline jolted me back to reality. Fresno police are investigating a horrifying incident. A customer at Walmart discovered a human finger in a loaf of bread purchased from the store's bakery. The cup in my hand slipped, the glass hitting the floor with a crash, the water spilling onto the carpet. My whole body froze, my eyes glued to the TV screen. Currently, DNA tests are underway to identify the victim. I gasped, my cold hands gripping the arm of the chair. The finger. It couldn't be. A wave of disgust surged from deep within me, making me want to vomit. I tried to find a reasonable explanation. Could it have been an accident? A sick joke from someone? An unusual mishap in production? But no scenario made sense. Because I had touched those loaves, I had packaged them with these hands. I had placed them on the shelf to sell, neatly, cleanly, at a ridiculously low price. And now, a part of someone's body had been in it. A piece of someone had been crushed, mixed into the dough, baked golden in the industrial oven, and then wrapped up in a clean plastic bag. Guilt welled up in my chest, choking me. Was I an accomplice? I had touched it. I had placed it on the shelf, unknowingly inviting customers to buy that disgusting thing. I tossed and turned in bed, rolling from side to side, unable to shake the horrific images from my head. The finger in the bread, the hair tangled in the soft filling, the oven that had been running all night. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me into darkness, but it wasn't peace. I found myself standing in the Walmart bakery. Everything was unnervingly silent. There were no machines running, no workers chatting, no bread puffing up in the oven. No more buttery smells, no more warmth from the fresh-baked trays. I slowly walked forward, each step echoing in the empty space. The silence felt unnatural, as if the whole world had stopped. Then, my gaze stopped at the industrial oven. I didn't understand why I felt scared, but an uneasy feeling began to spread through my body. Suddenly, something started to ooze from the oven's door. A thick, dark liquid slowly dripped down onto the white-tiled floor, creating long, winding streaks. I stared at it, trying to reassure myself that it was just strawberry jam, that maybe someone had spilled an ingredient. But then the foul, metallic smell hit me. I gasped for air, feeling my body freeze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I wanted to look away, to run, but some invisible force kept me rooted to the spot. The oven door slowly opened. Inside, amid the charred metal and ash, was Jim. Her body was burned, with patches of skin peeling away to reveal the charred flesh beneath. Her hair was no longer soft, only scorched clumps sticking to her distorted face. Her eyes were wide open, staring straight at me. Her mouth hung open, as if trying to scream. I stepped back, but she began to move. Jim lifted her arm, blackened and ulcerated, pointing directly at me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. Then her voice echoed, not through sound, but through a whisper that reverberated in my mind. "I'm still here." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, my breath rapid as if I had been submerged underwater. I woke up with dark circles under my eyes and my body exhausted after almost no sleep. My stomach twisted as I remembered the horrific nightmare. Jim in the oven, her burned body, her eyes staring at me. But I reassured myself that it was just a dream. A crazy dream brought on by my mind, haunted by Jim's disappearance and the terrifying news last night. I didn't even dare to check my phone or turn on the TV. I didn't want to hear any more news. When I entered Walmart, the atmosphere was eerily strange. People were gathered in small groups, whispering to each other, their faces all marked with a sense of shock. My heart pounded heavily, each beat hard to breathe with. A bad feeling crept into my cells. Then I heard a sentence that made my whole world crumble. "The police have confirmed. It's Jim." My legs felt weak. I leaned against the bakery counter to steady myself, but the dizziness in my head didn't fade. The finger in the bread. It was Jim's. The air in the supermarket seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe. Everything in the bakery, trays, flour, freshly baked loaves, all twisted in my eyes. The industrial oven was dismantled shortly after. Walmart closed for several weeks for the investigation. But no one knew the true story. A part of me wanted to believe it was just a terrible mistake, that no one could be cruel enough to do something like that. But the rest of me couldn't believe it. I no longer work at Walmart. Every time I step into a supermarket, every time I see a fresh loaf of bread, I hear Jim. Not a nightmare, not a hallucination, but a haunting whisper that echoes from the deepest parts of my mind. I'm still here. Almost a year has passed since that horrific day. I moved to another city, started a new job at a small bakery, trying to rebuild my life. But the memories of Jim, of Walmart, of those horrifying loaves of bread, still cling to me. I can't stop thinking about Brad, the man with the cold eyes and strange behavior. After the incident, he disappeared too. The police questioned all the staff, including Brad, but there was not enough evidence to charge anyone. But I know. Deep down, I know something is wrong with Brad. Jim's warning about him following her, the strange look when the hair was found in the bread, and his sudden disappearance after the incident, everything is just too coincidental. Was Jim's case really an accident, or was it a crime too cleverly concealed?